Okay, it looks like it's time, so we will go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Minnesota WIC Participant-Centered Webinar Series. My name's Karen. I work for Altarum Institute, a nonprofit healthcare research and consulting organization, and I'll be facilitating the webinar today. So the goal of these webinars is to share ideas and best practices around providing WIC services. Joining me today is my colleague Marcus, and he's going to be doing the behind-the-scenes work of monitoring the phone lines and making sure that things run smoothly today. We did a survey a while back, and we asked you the topic areas you'd like to cover during the webinar series. And one of the most popular topic areas selected by administrative and WIC support staff was dealing with difficult people. Whenever you work in public service, like we do, this will always be something that we have to do. Although most of our participants are lovely, it's inevitable that at some point we'll have to deal with someone who's upset, demanding, or rude. So that's what our topic will be today. For this particular topic, we also sent out a survey where we asked for your ideas around dealing with difficult people. Depending on when you registered, you may or may not receive this survey. But we asked about challenges, your suggestions, your strategies when you have to deal with difficult people. And we got so many great ideas, so I want to thank you all that responded to that survey. And that's what we'll be sharing today. I think that sharing ideas and things that work well with others helps us grow and improve our services. And I've also collected some tips and strategies. As part of my role, I get to go out and watch WIC services. Sometimes I get to just sit in waiting rooms and watch, see how people interact with WIC staff and how WIC staff interact with them. And I'm learning about what works and sometimes about what doesn't in terms of dealing with difficult people. So I'll share some of my stories as well today. Some of the key concepts we'll touch on today is why people act the way they do. What drives people to be difficult? We'll talk about human behavior and the fact that emotions and emotional needs have a big impact on our behavior and how we act towards ourselves and others. I'll share some best practices and suggestions that you made from the survey as well. Some include listening, cultivating empathy, explaining the process, and encouraging autonomy. And we'll talk about what that means within the WIC setting. And lastly, we'll talk about what dealing with difficult people does to us and how we have the power to lessen negative effects by practicing to choose our reaction. So now we'll go ahead and get started. So during The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy is desperately trying to find her way back home. And at the end of the movie, Glinda the Good Witch says to Dorothy, "You've always had the power, my dear. You just had to learn it for yourself." And I think this is really appropriate for this topic. Often we feel helpless when faced with difficult people. The way they act creates emotions in us and changes our behavior, and sometimes not in very positive ways. But we have more power than we know. We all have the power to impact other people, to influence their behaviors, their emotions, to influence how they act. If you had an easy button that made difficult people less difficult, wouldn't you use it? So we have to use that power within us that we have. And looking at what drives human behavior helps us do that. By harnessing this power and using some basic and simple strategies that we'll talk about today, we can make our jobs easier and more enjoyable on a daily basis. And it makes our participants' experience easier and more enjoyable as well. So we asked on the survey, what are your challenges? And here are some major themes that came out from the responses. Participants that aren't prepared. They consistently don't bring the right paperwork or tell you, "No one told me to bring those papers." Those people who miss appointments repeatedly and then they call and they want to get in immediately. Demanding people. "I want it now." Rude people. People who are late, impacting the schedule and causing services for others to be impacted as well. And there's also participants who are only interested in their WIC food benefits and not necessarily our nutrition education or counseling. You could have unruly kids. Kids might be tearing up the clinic and parents aren't intervening. What about WIC regulations? Maybe they can't get the food they want. They want Pediasure without a medical cause, or maybe it's almond milk instead of regular milk. Or maybe other regulations. They don't want to bring children or have a blood test. Could be people talking on the cell phone during appointments, taking calls while you're talking, texting. Some of you also mentioned difficult coworkers. Difficult people aren't isolated to WIC participants. You'll experience them in every facet of your life. The good news is that these strategies work with everyone and not just WIC participants. So these are some challenges. So where do we start? Well, we can start here. The secret to unleashing the power is to realize that emotions drive behaviors. Our emotions, often complex emotions, impact how we act, often in negative ways. By exploring human emotion and what drives it, we can impact people's emotions and behaviors in a positive way. And just like this iceberg, most of our emotions are beneath the surface. We're complex beings. We're not always aware of what's driving our behavior. And advertisers use this fact to sell us things. They try to make us feel a certain way. They target certain emotional needs and emotional pulse points that we all share to make us buy cars, buy potato chips, whatever it is. Well, we can use the same information to help better understand and better interact with participants and to change their behavior. We asked about, on the survey, we asked you about some possible causes. What causes people to be difficult? And here are some responses. Feeling powerless. This can cause people to try to gain power in other ways, to act out. Someone on the survey added, being overwhelmed by life and circumstances. When we feel powerless, we often lash out. Not having options. This is similar. When we feel we don't have free will or choice or control, when we're feeling pushed to do something that we might not want or might not be ready for, our natural response is to push back. Having unmet expectations. Maybe participants didn't get all the food or formula they thought they were entitled to. They weren't seen as quickly as they thought they would or should be. Or WIC doesn't have the appointment times that work for them. Vulnerability. Feeling vulnerable is a very uncomfortable emotion. Our mind will often try to do something to get out of that emotional state. And sometimes that's a shift to anger. Someone on the survey wrote, sometimes they feel like we're prying into their personal life, like when we ask about finances and living arrangements. And we do ask for a lot of personal information at WIC, and it's information that we don't often share with others, like our finances or our weight, especially if we're not happy about them. And this could be a vulnerable place. Also, our nutrition assessment is a vulnerable place, too. We're asking about behaviors that are often loaded with emotion. There's so much emotion behind eating behavior and parenting. And sometimes there's also shame involved there as well. And shame is a very painful emotion. Feeling disrespected, being made to wait, being treated like a number. Stressful life challenges. One person wrote, some clients are in very stressful situations that we know nothing about, and they take their anger out on us. Fear. Fear is behind most of these and behind many people who are being difficult. But it can be tricky sometimes because often the emotions don't show up or come out as the same emotion. I change it in my mind. Certain emotions like fear, vulnerability, shame, we often change these into another emotion of defense, like anger. It's a protection mechanism. For many of us, if we haven't learned how to process these negative emotions or to express our needs positively, often it comes out in other ways, like being difficult. I'll give you some examples. This happens to me when I'm confused and I can't figure out the process of something. For example, I might go somewhere and I can't figure out where to check in, what the steps are. I feel confused. And what does my mind do with this emotion? How does it come out? It often comes out like this. I go to anger instead. I think, this is stupid. And this is my defense mechanism for feeling vulnerable. And so to keep from feeling vulnerable, that confusion, I use a coping mechanism, and that's to get angry. Or, what about when I'm feeling forced to do something, or I don't have choices? My typical go-to response or emotion is, you can't make me. I push back. Like an iceberg, you only see the tip, the anger, the resistance, the pushback. You can't see that I'm really feeling backed into a corner, and I'm feeling a loss of control. And most of the time, the person that's acting out can't either. The emotions that are driving the actions, they're unconscious. When I feel bad about myself or not good enough, sometimes I also lash out. Say I made a mistake at work. Sometimes I unconsciously go right to blame. Well, she didn't give me the information that I needed, or I wouldn't have made that mistake. It's her fault. So what I'm trying to do is explain my emotion of pain or inadequacy with the reasons why. So people have basic emotional needs, and when we can help meet these needs, we can help people feel better, act better, and make our lives and their lives easier. So there's an emotion, a need for connection, for love. Another emotional needs are confidence and self-esteem. Everyone wants to be their best self, to feel good about who they are, be proud about themselves and their children. Significance and importance. It's good to know what your triggers are as well. What are the emotional responses that make you react negatively or be difficult? Getting that self-awareness can help you grow. Importance is one that's often behind my anger and acting out. If, for example, I'm made to wait a long time without an explanation as to why, or I'm left on hold, I feel like I'm not being treated like I matter, like I'm not important. And this is a big trigger for me and my anger. Security and control, having a sense that you have the power to impact the situation. Growth and improvement, that human desire to be the best we can be, to grow. Understanding and respect, we all have the need to feel heard and to be understood. And when these emotional needs aren't met, we often react in negative ways, and our participants are the same way. But the good news is there are techniques that we can use to help meet these emotional needs in people. And when we use these, we can often shift that negative behavior. Not always, but often. And they're fairly simple techniques. But if we use them consistently, we can influence how others feel and how they respond. They're really simple but quite powerful. When we asked what techniques work for you when dealing with difficult people, listening was the #1 response from survey respondents. Cultivating empathy was mentioned by many of you. Other techniques involved explaining the process, show me that you like me, and I'll talk more about each of these, offering choices, asking permission, and apologizing. First, we'll talk about listening. When people are feeling angry or frustrated, their biggest need is to feel heard and understood. By listening fully to participants' concerns, we let them know that they're important and their concerns are important. Often, our first inclination when faced with anger is to jump right in and fix and solve the problem. But it's important to let people express themselves fully before searching for a solution. It's sometimes difficult to do to listen to people vent, but sometimes just by getting it out, by being heard, even if you can't solve their issue, it's okay. Being heard was the main point, being understood. Here are some of the responses from the survey around listening. Really listen. Acknowledge that they are upset and try to solicit why they are upset. Often people try to ignore or avoid talking about why a client is upset, but I find the opposite is more effective. Ask the client what is wrong. Then you have an opportunity to address the issue. Remain calm. Really listen and don't interrupt. Whatever concern the difficult client has, it is real to them and they want to be heard. So the words remain calm, I would say those two words, remain calm, were the most popular words from the survey. So simple and yet so difficult because we're human too and we're subject to the same emotional drivers. When someone is venting anger at us, our natural and immediate emotional response is defense. But if I want to change the situation, to use my power, I have to fight that natural impulse because that's not going to get me what I want. Try to remain calm, actively listen, empathize, and offer options. Give full attention, offering listening ears without judgment. So non-judgment is also something that has to be practiced. It can be difficult. As humans, we naturally tend to judge others. But when we can practice cultivating non-judgment, it can be very helpful. You can listen with your ears. You can have body language that says you're interested and ready to listen. You can also use your words to tell them that they've been heard. How about this participant statement? I'll read it. It's your fault that I keep missing my appointments. You keep scheduling me in the morning. That's when I have to take my son to school. How can I be two places at once? So you can imagine yourself being at the receiving end of this statement. And my first emotional response would be defense. It's not my fault that you're missing your appointments. But again, expressing my anger is only going to bring about corresponding anger from her, and that's not what we want. We want to change the situation or change her emotions away from anger. So instead, can we give her a statement back that says, I hear you, I'm listening. So how about this? Afternoon appointments are going to work better for you. So often when we can reflect what we're hearing, that morning appointments aren't working for her, what the underlying issue is, you often see a dramatic letting go of anger. The participant's unconscious brain goes, she gets me, she understands me, and I can drop my defensiveness. So how about this woman? Just looking at her changes my emotional state. I think it would take a great deal of effort to stay calm with that finger in my face. So let's pretend that she's going to say something to us, and we have to choose a response that tells her that we're listening to her. So first I'll read her statement, and then we'll think about some possible answers. So here's her anger statement. Why do you keep asking me all the same questions every time? Just check your computer. My answers haven't changed. You're wasting my time. So how can we remain calm and not take that personally? She personalized it, which makes it especially challenging. She said, I'm wasting her time. So my mind goes to defense. No, I'm working for WIC because I want to help people. Don't attack me. Can we instead give her a statement back that gives her some acknowledgement of her frustration? Help her feel understood and perhaps shift her emotional state. So what I'm going to do is read some possible responses and take a poll. So first I'll read the statement again. Why do you keep asking me the same questions every time? Just check your computer. My answers haven't changed. You're wasting my time. So possible responses, and you can vote for your favorite, are currently we have to ask each time. It seems like if they could streamline the process, it would make it easier for busy parents. Or WIC requires a lot of information each time to confirm eligibility. It can make it challenging for parents and caregivers like you. Or it is frustrating to have to ask and answer the same questions each time. It feels repetitive. Or maybe there's another response that works for you. Go ahead and vote now, and we'll see what response you like the best here. Okay, I think I've got most of the votes. So I'll go ahead and broadcast the results. So it looks like there's a fairly even split here. Looks like the winner was, it's frustrating to have to ask and answer the same questions each time. It feels repetitive. Sounds like that was the winner. So you want to think about how to phrase things that matches your style, how you can give that person back what you're hearing that makes sense for you. The second most popular suggestion on how to deal with difficult people from the survey was to work on cultivating empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand the feelings of another. So can we say to ourselves, there's probably a good reason for her acting this way, and if I knew the reason, I'd probably forgive her. It's hard to do, but it's powerful, and this thought can help us control that emotional response. So here are some responses from the survey around empathy. Put yourself in their shoes. You never know what might have happened in someone's life that is causing them to act out. Remember, it's always easier to target someone who happens to be right in front of you, even if they're not the true source of your problems or frustration. One person used a fun metaphor in the survey. They said, remember that today might be her bad hair day or the day where everything goes wrong. Another quote, just being aware that the client may be going through a very difficult season in their life and be patient with them. Be empathetic about challenges WIC participants deal with on a daily basis. Being empathetic goes a long way. One person wrote, sometimes they cry, and sometimes they end up saying thank you, and they're glad they came. So what this says is often people shift right in front of your eyes if you practice empathy. And this brings up another point in how to harness our power, and that is when difficult people shift, we have to stay open to it. What I see a lot is that when faced with anger or difficult people, we shift our behavior. Our emotions cause us to be defensive and act differently. And what this can do is shut ourselves off from seeing when this person lets go of their negative emotions and makes that shift. I see this a lot when people have been made to wait a long time. When it's finally their turn, they have to express their feelings of anger and disrespect. And often it could sound something like, how long is this going to take? I have to go. But often if we stay positive, they can quickly let go and start engaging. I see it all the time. But what I also see is that sometimes we don't allow room for that shift. We say internally to ourselves, okay, this person is difficult. I'm just going to get through this. In our minds, we almost label her, and as a result, we change how we interact with her, and we don't pick up on the fact that midway through, she changed. She's no longer angry, but we are. So staying in empathy, staying open isn't easy, but it's like a muscle. If you practice with it and practice staying open, you'll get better at it. WIC is confusing, and sometimes we forget this because we know it so well. But WIC has a lot of rules and procedures. Often when people are confused about the process or unsure of what to expect, it can appear as anger or aspiration. It's embarrassing not to know sometimes, so our brain turns that into anger, a protection mechanism. So think about times when you felt uncomfortable or not known the process, that emotion of not knowing and how it feels. For me, I think of maybe the process of buying a car, which I hate, or say I needed to install a furnace and I don't know thing one about buying furnaces. So often when I go out and I sit in waiting rooms, what I watch for is when people walk in, is it absolutely clear where to go or what to do? Sometimes I'll see a person come in and look confused. And people also have anxiety about what's going to happen during their WIC appointment or during the WIC process. And explaining that process clearly reduces that anxiety and the fear and increases that feeling of security. Everything's going to be okay. For example, maybe you hear something like, first you'll sit with me, we'll look at your paperwork, check your income, get you set up on the program. Then someone will weigh and measure your child, and you'll get to talk with a nutrition person about how your family eats and their health. And at the end, you'll also receive vouchers for healthy foods that you can buy at the store. Does that sound okay? And also with new people, that good explanation about WIC and our process can save so much difficulty down the road. Finding out what they've heard about WIC, clearing up any misconceptions, telling them about what they'll need each time and what they can expect each time they come. And we also want to think about our word choice as well. We have a lot of confusing terms at WIC. Sometimes I notice when people use terms I don't understand, it makes me feel uncomfortable and vulnerable. Sometimes I notice with my computer people or IT people in my company, the words they use, sometimes I can feel not so smart when they talk to me or less than, and this causes me to be difficult. But then I notice there's some that speak at my level and use words I can understand. In this case, I don't have the same feelings of inadequacy. So we can look at our terms and how to better explain them, our CERT, our AE for additional ed, all kinds of WIC language that we use. We said that one of our emotional needs is for connection, that relationship, to feel liked or understood by another person. If I think that you like me, well then I'm going to like you, and I'm going to trust you more. And when I trust you, my guard comes down. I can drop that defensiveness that I built up around me to protect me. So how can you show someone you like them? Someone on the survey wrote, compliment them on something they're doing well. Take an interest in their family or their child. Ask questions about their family. And encourage the mom or dad or grandparent that they're a good parent and they're doing a good job. In my role of working with different WIC programs, I often do focus groups where I talk to a group of parents or caregivers about their experience at WIC. And when people are asked about how they feel they're treated by WIC staff, the ones that respond favorably often mention that WIC staff are good to their children, and that means a lot to them. So here are some quotes from one of my recent focus groups. The one lady always makes conversation with the kids, so they are very friendly. We love coming to this place. My kids love being here. Everyone is so kind. They always have smiling faces and are kid-friendly. They keep my kids entertained. So any way we can make that bond or show them that we can be trusted and they don't have to fear, that will shift a person's actions and their emotions. We said that one of our emotional needs is for security and control. Autonomy is a word for that feeling of control. Autonomy means that the people have the power in the situation. They have the control or the ability to affect the outcome of the situation. When people feel like they don't have control or they're denied choices, they will often lash out and act difficult to try to control the situation somehow or show their displeasure about not having control. And I think about the word empower when thinking about this concept. I want to give power to the participant. What small things can I do to give them that reassurance, that security? And there were a few strategies from the survey to help us with this empowerment. The first is offer choices when possible. Choices give people that feeling of power, of personal control. Where are areas when I can offer choices? Maybe it's the time of day that will work best for them for their appointment. Sometimes even when choices aren't the exact ones they want. Say if someone missed their appointment and comes in later and wants to be seen right away and you just can't make that happen. Maybe they still have some form of choice. Maybe your response is, you have the choice. You could feel free to wait, and if a staff person becomes available or someone else doesn't show for their appointment, we could fit you in. Or if it works better for you, we could make another appointment for you that might be better. And this example might not work for your type of WIC model, but my point is that having any type of choice will help diffuse that feeling of powerlessness that often causes people to lash out. Another idea is to ask permission. This gives people the feeling of control. If it's okay with you, I'll look over this paperwork now and get it entered into our system. Is that okay? Or to enroll him on the program, we'll also need to take his height and weight and take a little drop of blood. Is that okay? Or would it be helpful for you if I shared some strategies other parents use when weaning their babies from the bottle? By giving them that small power of agreement, of saying yes, they subconsciously will be more willing to want, accept, and act on the information they receive. Many of you also wrote apologizing on the survey, and this is a major way to diffuse anger. People often expect anger to be met with defensiveness. An apology often subconsciously takes the person by surprise. It helps dissipate the anger immediately. When they receive apology, their mood often changes for the better. And often we do this even when we know it wasn't our fault, which can take some getting used to. I think about it like I'm sorry for the situation that they're in, not necessarily sorry for my individual actions. When you apologize, participants often reciprocate and thank you for apologizing. Here are some quotes from the survey around empowering others with these strategies. Be flexible. Apologize even if you don't think you're wrong. If unable to give what's desired, apologize and give choices for what is available, other resources. Ask for suggestions, offer solutions, and remember to ask participants if including others in the discussion. Would it be okay if I would call my supervisor to visit with us? So this person went on to say, as long as you don't think the person will be violent in any way, often it helps to bring the upset person into an office or somewhere private, changing the environment. And this can help them with that feeling of being heard, of feeling important. So some of you mentioned the challenge of the cell phone on the survey, texting during conversations, answering calls during their appointment, something we all struggle with, and I know I do. Being constantly connected to social media and cell phones is relatively new, and a lot of people don't follow expected rules or assumptions around cell phone use. For me, I think that this is one of the ones that plays into my need for importance or respect. When I'm out with my friend for dinner and she's texting someone else, I'm thinking, I'm a friend that's right in front of you. Why are you texting someone else? I get angry. And many of you wrote that this is challenging at WIC too. So talking on the cell phone and texting interrupts our time, takes away from rapport building and from effectiveness of our WIC services. So what's a good response for when someone's on the cell phone or texting? I have to say I've never found one that I feel completely comfortable with, but I've heard some good ones. And I want to do a poll here, so I want to read you some of the responses, and I want to hear what you think might work best with participants as a response. So a response could be no response, just wait until they're finished. Or you could say because of confidentiality, I'm afraid we can't have cell phone usages in the offices. Or do you need some extra time to take that or finish that? Or if this is not an emergency, would you mind waiting until after the session is over? Or we ask everyone to try to refrain from texting or calling during appointments unless, of course, it's urgent. Or maybe you have a better response. So go ahead and vote now, and we'll see which response comes out on top. Some people are switching their votes up on me here. Okay. So it looks like there's several responses that have similar votes. It looks like the most popular one is, do you need some extra time to take that or to finish that? But you have to find the response that you feel comfortable using. And I invite you, if you do find something that works for you, share it with others so that they can use it as well. I will move on. So we talked about participant responses, and I want to talk a little bit about our responses when faced with a difficult person or a difficult situation. So difficult people often cause us to change our emotions and then our behavior. We get defensive. We get angry. It's a natural response. There's a couple of things here. One is that this reaction produces stress in our bodies. Our bodies release chemicals that are involved in the fight or flight response. Like this guy here, his body is flooding with chemicals right now to help him either fight that lion or run as fast as he can away from it. And those chemicals are good in this case when faced with a lion. But your body doesn't know the difference sometimes between different stressful situations. When that anger and that defense response comes up, the same chemicals are released. And if this happens a lot, it can be bad for our health, for our hearts, our circulatory system, and our immune system. So that's one reason why we want to practice controlling or choosing our reaction. Another reason we've already mentioned is that when we go to that place, we change how we're interacting with that participant. We're giving up our power to shift that person, to change the situation. And we don't want to give up that power. We want to harness it. And being open to seeing that person shift and change. And if we can let them shift and change, our job gets easier. So what are some things we can do to control our emotional response, to stay calm, to stay open, to protect ourselves and reduce our stress? Well, one thing is just to breathe. On the survey, as I said, the most popular 2 words written by you all were, be calm. Simple, but often so difficult. One person wrote, excuse yourself and go into the other room for a few seconds, or cover the phone and give a huge sigh, and then continue with the call. So controlling our breathing helps control the stress response. You could use a trigger word to remember to breathe. Maybe it's as simple as breath, or calm, or let go. And the second strategy is to use your thoughts, to think before reacting. Emotions are faster than our thoughts. The emotional response is instantaneous. So you have to make that conscious effort to think before responding to that emotion. Most times, feeling the response might be beyond our control, but we can choose how to react to that emotional response. If they're giving you anger, it might stem from fear, confusion, powerlessness. It might have nothing to do with you. Our human instinct is to give back to that person and meet anger with anger or anger with defense, but you don't have to. You could instead try to see below the anger and give them what they really want or really need. And to do this, to get your brain activated, you could ask yourself questions before you respond. Could you think to yourself, what are my options here? Can I see this as a challenge and try to shift this person? Can I harness my power? Is there something I could learn here? So you can choose your state, your response. Don't give up your power and let someone else dictate how you'll feel. I want to thank you all for sharing all the ideas and best practices around dealing with difficult people. A lot of them were such simple techniques that can improve our experience with participants and with other people in general. They're simple. Doesn't mean they're easy, though. It takes work. Harnessing your power is a practice. It's not something that just happens. You have to work for it. I am continuously practicing. It takes a lot of self-awareness, too. You have to think about, how am I feeling? Why am I feeling like this? And what does it really mean? Or how do I want to be? Or how do I want to react? And as you practice, you'll find little things to help reclaim your power, to shift your outlook, shift your techniques, and watch how that impacts the other person. So, looks like I don't have other comments or questions. So I want to thank you all so much for sharing your ideas on the survey and for joining us today for this participant-centered webinar. So have a great night, and thank you.